Hello, I'm Ryan Shelton. Not Ryan Reynolds, if that's what you thought. Sometimes people read Ryan and get bored and fail to read Shelton and just assume that it's Ryan Reynolds. No way. This is Sheltsy. But now that you're here, let's relax. I am about to tell you a story. But before I do that, make sure you're in a comfortable position. Lie down, sit up, put your hands where I can see them. No funny business, please. And start breathing now. Feels good, doesn't it? Breathing. I started breathing when I was 11, and I was hooked immediately. My parents say that I get that from my grandfather. My grandfather was a breather. And ever since I started breathing, I couldn't stop. I was addicted. So, if you're enjoying the breathing, I can relate. Now, to the story. The true story of my great, 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 great grandfather. Peter and his wife, Carmen. Carmen and Peter were inventors, not breathers, which did cause them some trouble. But they were inventors. They believed in the ideas. People called Carmen an ideas man. She was constantly correcting people that she was an ideas woman because she was not a man. She was a woman. They would come up with hundreds of ideas. But this story is the story of one such idea that made them famous. An idea so simple and so revolutionary that it's an idea that you will know all about and probably take for granted, because you probably take everything for granted. Why don't you stop and smell the roses once in a while? I'm sorry, I shouldn't raise my voice. I get pretty furious when people don't stop to smell the roses. Maybe you'll start stopping and smelling the roses after this story. They came up with this idea one day, and they passed the story on to their children, who passed it 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 on to their children, and they passed it on to their children, and they passed it on to their child. They only had one, and he passed it on to their children. I've lost count, to be honest, but you take my point. And here I am telling you the story of the invention of carpet. It was a rainy day in their small house in the Queen's land. It's where the Queen, used to live. And it was all hers. That's why they call it Queen's Land. Because it was quite literally the Queen's land. She loved that land. But one day, she wanted a sea change. So she moved to England. And built a palace out of ham. But they couldn't call the Queen's house Ham Palace. It was silly. But even though it was made from ham, it was changed to Buckingham Palace, which is what it is known today. But I digress. Back to Queensland. Carmen and Peter, sitting in their small house on a rainy day. The droplets hitting the window. The fire roaring in the corner. A cup of cocoa going cold in the corner because Carmen made it and changed her mind. They had a long week, were tired, and wearing slippers to keep their tiny feet warm. say tiny because their feet were the size of matchboxes. Just like mine. They would walk around on their cold wooden floors and would spend a fortune on slippers. They couldn't just go to a store and buy slippers because of those tiny feet. Instead, they found a man, a slipperist, who produced custom slippers that would house their tiny feet. But times were tough in the Queensland back then. They couldn't afford special slippers anymore. Peter said, "You know what, Carmen?" Carmen said, "Shut up, Pete, I'm watching my show." Peter persisted. No, Carmen. Listen up. I have an idea." She paused the show and slowly turned around to Peter. Her neck was wooden and would creak. She made the full rotation and said, "Peter, this better be good, mate. I've stopped my show for it." He said, "I don't think you'll be very disappointed in this doozy." She raised her eyebrows. Her eyebrows were wooden too. He said, "What if the floor was one big slipper?" "Oh, that is a doozy," she said out loud, like a person. He said, "What if, Carmen, what if we created a fluffy, comfortable, warm surface and covered our wooden floors with them? We would never, ever have to spend money on those tiny slippers again." That was Carmen reaching for her cocoa. Her arm is also wooden. Carmen sipped her cocoa, pondering the idea that Peter had just expelled from his mouth. That was the door. Peter had to go to work. The door was also wooden. Peter forgot his keys. That was the door again. Sorry, Carmen. Just forgot the keys. Okay, honey, said Carmen. Make sure you come back tonight so we can talk more about this idea. Oh, I will, Carmen. Don't you worry. You're a worrywart, aren't you? Peter thought. And then he said it. You're a worrywart, aren't you? She smiled. That was the door again. "5:30 p.m. that night. The dog was growling. It's not a wooden dog, that was a growl. Small dog. The dog again. Peter came home from work. Carmen was pleased. Let's talk more about this floor idea, Peter. I had an idea for the name. Yes, he said. How about carpet? Because I'm Carmen and you're Peter. Carpet. He wasn't very responsive to the name, so he thought to himself, as people tend to do, and after a few seconds, he said, "Why carpet? It's my idea. Shouldn't it be pet car?" Pet car? That sounds like a car for a pet. Why would anyone buy flooring that is called something that's quite clearly a vehicle for your domesticated animal? He said, "Fine, let's call it carpet." And then he sighed a big sigh like this. He was annoyed, and Carmen picked up on it, but didn't want to acknowledge it because she had him right where she wanted him. She knew that carpet was a much better name than pet car. And clearly, she was right. So next time you walk on your carpet, just remember, just spare a thought for Carmen and Peter. Good night.